In the name of the one holy and undivided Trinity, amen. Amen. Please have a seat. I'd like to offer today a defense of the Pharisees as good stewards. I am aware that this sounds like the exact opposite point of this story. I know. Don't get freaked out. Just come with me for a second. A lot of fuss has been made over the years attempting to figure out what this particular gospel reading means in practice. Oh, the P's and this mic. Maybe about a month in, we might come to an agreement. In practice, for Christians, should we pay taxes? Should we tithe? I think the folks who choose the lectionary readings, they must be in this room for weeks on end, right? They're getting a little punch drunk, and they think, oh, I know, we'll do render unto Caesar right in the middle of October, pledge month. I think that probably gives them a good laugh, maybe 1 a.m. Should we pay taxes that go to purchasing war supplies? What is our relationship with money? And when the Pharisees come to Jesus with this question, it is a question with real material consequences in their country, which is under occupation by Rome. This isn't a theoretical question for them. It is a question about political loyalty, which, if answered incorrectly, might have some crucifixion-related consequences. This question isn't a game, especially when it's being witnessed by Herodians, who are political loyalists to Rome. And in our time, likewise suffering gross economic inequities and dire poverty, the implications remain neither rhetorical nor academic. That said, today, as we get to be together for the very first time, long dreamed, long awaited, long anticipated, I'd like to pull back the frame a little on this story because I think there is a story happening underneath the story, hidden under that very real question. A story about community and about stewardship and about relationship. So let's step back from the content for a minute and look at the people. Let's talk for a minute about the Pharisees, so maligned in our church language. They were a Jewish association, sect, I guess, during the Second Temple period, emerging after the Hasmonean revolt. And by the 1st century CE, when this story takes place, they represent the beliefs and practices of the huge majority of the Jewish population, even in diaspora. They preached adaptation of ancient laws to contemporary situations, recompense in an afterlife, observance of the Torah, and everyday holiness, while emphasizing apocalypse, a final judgment, and a resurrection of the dead. Does that sound familiar? It should. So they became what we now understand as institutional rabbinical Judaism, while laying the groundwork for much of Christian theology. And the Pharisees are always around in the gospel stories. They're always around. They keep coming back, even when they don't like what they hear. In that way, I think the boundary between them and the disciples is not as bright as we might like it to be. So they're always there. They keep coming back. We're getting warmer now, closer to this silly assertion that the Pharisees are practicing good stewardship. minus the creepy flattery in the beginning. The Pharisees are doing in this story just what we do. Taking a precept, a story, a rule, and asking, how do we use this now? What does it mean for us now, given this particular situation? The law says this. What do we do with it? What do we owe, and to whom, and why? What do we do with our money and our legacy and our holy books? What do we do with our rules? And they did the right thing. They went right to this outlaw storyteller and healer and asked him what he thought. They didn't dismiss him out of hand, or worse, ignore him. They didn't gossip about him behind his back and put words in his mouth. They went to him. They engaged him. They were in community with him. And as we know, one of the occasional side effects of intimate community is malice. Sometimes we test each other. Sometimes we wait to trap each other. Sometimes there's that objective, one-up position, waiting for someone to make a mistake and then triumphantly or pretend reluctantly announcing it when they do. Sometimes there's name-calling in return, like Jesus does in this passage. Of course, the church is immune from all these behaviors. It's not pretty, right? But it's real. Those not nice things that both the Pharisees and Jesus engage in this story are sometimes side effects of living very near one another and taking the risk of sharing important ideas and the truths of our hearts. Those are frightening, vulnerable things to do together. And aside from the name-calling, there's a very sweet piece of Jesus' response, which again is not in its content. It is that he refuses, in the midst of knowing he's being tested, to take the bait. He knows that what is happening is part of being in a dynamic, living tradition where the law is not dead. He knows there's more at stake than the content of his answer. And he realizes that what they need most, at just that moment, is a bit of levity. A mirror on their own self-seriousness, a flip, a gentle touch, a non-answer. Exactly the thing they weren't looking for. He knew that in that state of mind, they weren't going to be able to have a substantive conversation about resistance and money and ethics and occupation. They were both going to have to snap out of it for a second. Snap out of it. To be able to see one another with clarity. In a story where it seems like no one is behaving well, I think actually they were behaving just like people do in community, and perhaps doing the best they could at right that moment. And these are ways for us to be with one another as well. We can and should mimic the Pharisees in their absolute refusal to let Jesus go, in their relentlessness to seek God's will, in their commitment to be near Jesus and to seek truth wherever it might be found, even in an uppity, upstart, itinerant preacher, in their theological curiosity and thirst for new applications of ancient values. That is good stewardship of community. And good stewardship of the law, of values. And We can and should mimic Jesus in this story. When we are occasionally difficult with one another, when we make big decisions about how to think or act about sin or inequity in our world, we can go with the new, the surprise, the unexpected, the gentle. We can experiment. We can play. We can model trying and failing and laughing and trying again. We can be what the world does not expect. That is also good stewardship of community. What have we been given, and what shall we do with it? We have been given this building, years of grief sunk into the floor and the ground beneath us on this particular corner. Years of hopes and dreams, secret prayers sent upward. This building, which in a short 24 hours has seen deep sorrow for the early loss of Gordon Pollard and great joy for my first day, is strong and sturdy enough to hold both, in part because of Gordy's work on its roof. We have been given saints who taught us how to pray and who brought us food when we were sick. We have been given Bibles, ancient stories, and prayer books. We have been given and walk in the door, for better or for worse, family stories, parents and children and spouses. We have been given songs. Most preciously, today, as we begin our new life together, we have been given each other. What shall we do together? Who shall we be?